Last week I simulated 100 years in the future in FM23. We saw Newcastle dominate the Champions League, Monza take over Serie A, and Dortmund drop down to the third tier of German football. But I've carried on the simulation and we're now 250 years in the future, and boy, do things get wild. But it got me thinking, so much is going to change in the next 250 years, will we actually still be playing football? Or are we all going to be playing Mech Arena instead with Neymar Jr.? Mech Arena is a free-to-play mech shooter game available on mobile and PC, where you can team up with your mates and blow up other mechs. Mech Arena have also teamed up with one of the OG Football Manager wonder kids, Neymar Jr., who's coming to the game as a limited edition mech pilot, and you get him for free by just playing the game. It turns out Neymar Jr. is one of the most powerful pilots in the game. Known for his speed in the real world, he lets your mech sprint 40% longer and 40% more often, as well as providing a boost to your damage from missile weapons and assault weapons. To get Neymar Jr., you just need to play Mech Arena on 7 different days between now and the 18th of December. And if Neymar Jr. isn't enough, you can add me as a friend in-game so we can play together. Maybe Neymar Jr. is a little bit more appealing, but if you download the game via my link in the description or QR code, you'll get an amateur crate, 300 A coins and a Pulse 4 cannon for a head start in the game. So a big thanks to Mech Arena for sponsoring this video, allowing me to spend 50 hours of precious FM23 beta time simulating 250 years in the future. Anyway, I think 50 hours of simulation is well worth a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, as we're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. So the save file we're using is actually 245 years in the future because at the moment I'm having some issues. It seems like if you simulate 200 plus years in the future, sometimes the save files just corrupt of their own accord. For example, if we load the save file from 2272, 250 years in the future, and press load, you can see that as it gets halfway through loading, the game crashes. The really annoying thing is that in 2272, Lincoln City, my team, got to the Premier League. But in the save file we're going to be using, they're not there. So you're going to have to trust me on this one. But I think 245 years in the future is not too bad. And we'll start off with the Premier League, where Barnet are the most recent title holders, beating West Brom by 2 points. Cardiff and Rochdale finish up the top 4, but as you can see, Champions League and European places are now at a minimum. Obviously, we've already done 100 years in the future in a separate video, so we're going to start this video looking from 2122 onwards. And there were quite a few different winners of the Premier League, ranging from MK Dons to Newcastle to Stockport to Reading and Swindon. But as we scroll up the screen, you can see that teams like Barrow got in there winning a few titles. MK Dons went on quite a good run in the late 2160s. And then was always Newcastle coming back winning the odd title. And then you get to this sort of phase where there's just so many different winners across so many different seasons, like your Prestons, West Broms, Halifaxes, Forest Green, Bristol Rovers, Harrogates, Tranmere's, Leeds, Barnsleys. Like there's so many different teams winning the Premier League. And you keep going up until actually MK Dons have a bit of dominance here in the late century. But as we turn the century, again, it's just so many different random clubs winning it. I mean, even Grimsby get a title in there, which is really frustrating. Halifax, I feel like I've won quite a few titles. How many have they won across their life? Only 3. I just feel like I've pointed out every single time Halifax have won the title, I guess, maybe. And most recently, Woking have picked up a double. But Man City are the most successful team in Premier League history, partly down to this big run from 2250 to 2263, where they won every single Premier League title to go on to have 55 Premier League titles in total, as well as 15 Champions Leagues. The most recent winners of the Champions League are Budapest Honved, congratulations to them, but one of the most dominant teams in recent years in world football is FC Edinburgh, who have got to 4 Champions League finals here, losing 2 of them and winning 2 of them, but in total they've gone on to win 8 Champions Leagues. Well done, you lot. I mean, even Dundee have done pretty well here, as you can see, reaching 3 finals and winning 2 of them. Wraith have won 1 as well, so really this was a period of massive Scottish domination. But as we scroll down this time, going backwards in the future, you can see that teams from Hungary, such as Ferencváros, have won plenty of titles. Fenerbahce got into quite a few finals, and actually Ferencváros lost a lot of finals as well, as you can see there on the screen. So a real domination period there for the Hungarian side in European football. But one team that always seems to be coming up in here are Benfica. they always seem to win titles every now and again. There was a nice bit of rivalry going on with the Prague teams right here. Both Prague teams winning dominant Champions League victories multiple times down here, as you can see. So Prague was really the capital of world football at one point, or European football at one point. But the most dominant run that I remember seeing is Djurgården's winning 5 in a row. The team from Sweden were absolutely unstoppable. And it does look like teams went in pairs for a little while. Benfica picked up 2 there, Copenhagen picked up 2, Austria Vienna picked up 2 together. Maribor won 5 in a row. Wow. But as you might have guessed, the most dominant team have been Benfica, winning 44 Champions League titles. But Man City hold the highest attendance ever in the Champions League with 139,740 against Benfica, but also feature in the lowest attendance ever as Chievo hosted 286 fans in 2062. Interestingly, the highest win ever has not been beaten. It's still Dinamo Bucharest versus Crusaders in 1973. And the highest scoring match has also not been beaten. That was set in 1969. But at the turn of the 22nd century, Newcastle were the most dominant side in the Champions League, going 38 games without a loss. What I find mental though is that no player has scored more than 20 goals in a Champions League season. In fact, the record is just 18 by Jorge Fernandez from Man City in the 2067-68 season. But what I find really interesting about this Champions League though is that other than Man City winning it in 22-62, no other team in recent memory have won it from the other traditional top 5 leagues of Europe. La Liga has dropped down to 15th in European competition reputation rankings, as you can see, with Mirandes still one of the most dominant teams in all of La Liga. They were in the last video that we did as well. The Bundesliga is still going strong though, as you can see, with 4 teams qualifying for the Champions League for next season, with Hanover winning the title with only 58 points scored in total. PSG are nowhere to be seen in the top flight of France as Auxerre win the title, again with a very low points total of 55, just doing it on goal difference. But it's Serie A that have fallen the most. As you can see, they are 28th in competition reputation rankings, and Monza are still the top team in there. I was told in my last video that Brienza are the unlicensed name of Monza, so that's who they are in this. They're currently second behind Empoli, but as you can see on the recent winners, they've won a lot of titles, and actually in total Monza have won just the 72 Serie A titles. Despite all that dominance though, not a single Champions League for them, which is a real shame. Now, last time we were here for the 100 Years in the Future video, we saw Costa Rica and China win their first World Cups in 2118 and 2122. Well, Costa Rica went on to win another World Cup in the following edition of the World Cup, with Argentina being the runners-up. But Argentina then went on to win 3 in a row, beating Uruguay in all 3 finals. Poor Uruguay. Interestingly, the 2130 World Cup is the exact same final as it was in the very first World Cup in 1930, although this time Argentina beat Uruguay. Portugal beat Jamaica in their first ever World Cup final there in 2142 before Chile beat France there in the following edition. But as we scroll up and look through all of the rest of the history of the World Cup, which there is so much of, it looks wild. Wales win their first ever World Cup in 2174, followed by Denmark and Turkey also winning their first ones in the following editions of the World Cup. Poland beat England in the 2190 final to win their first ever World Cup, before Venezuela beat Slovakia in Mexico to claim that one. The Mexicans did get to a final in 2210. They beat Romania, who then went on to win the next edition of the World Cup, but then were dethroned by Bulgaria. China won a second World Cup in 2234, and I'm looking here in 2238. I think this is the first time the Dutch have won a World Cup. A team that have been to so many finals, they're finally going to win one in 2238. And to be fair, once you've won one, you don't have to wait all that much longer either, because 2250, then Dutch also win another World Cup, with Colombia winning the 2 World Cups in between that, Costa Rica getting to another final. If the Dutch thought it was a long time to wait for a World Cup, Africa had to wait even longer, Ghana being the first African team to win a World Cup in 2254. But the USA never won one. They got to a final here, losing to Colombia, sadly for them, but the US, no World Cups. And so 250 years in the future, Argentina are the most successful side in World Cup history, winning 9 titles. The highest ever attendance, though, is still the 200,000 that came to see Brazil v Uruguay in the 1950 final. And just like we saw in the Champions League, the goal-scoring records have not been broken either. The biggest win is still Hungary 10, El Salvador 1 in 1982. The high-scoring match is still a 7-5 win for Austria over Switzerland in 1954, and Justin Fontaine's 13 goals in the 1958 edition is still the record. Qatar hold one of the most unwanted records, though, in World Cup history. They've gone 67 games without winning. This record goes back from June 2074 to June 2226. I mean, that is over 150 years without winning a World Cup match. Because this save file is so humongous and so much happens, there's not a hope in hell we could go through absolutely everything in this video. So I am going to be nice. I'm going to put the save file for this up for download for everyone with a link down in the description. Go grab it, explore it, and tell me your biggest findings over on Twitter.